let me tell you a bit about what Big Colours is. We've been launched for the past 8 weeks, and you may have seen us on tech blogs and so forth. We are aiming to trade startups before they start, but more importantly, more than anything else, is we want to solve a couple of problems. I'm an angel investor, invested in a few companies, done okay on some of them, done semi-semi on others, but one of the pain points from myself as an investor is that I can invest in a company, it could grow rapidly, but then I can't exit. And so I can't get capital to invest in another company, which I may want to invest in. And for startups, you can't get capital, particularly here in Asia. So what we're doing here at Big Colours, we've created the world's first startup trading platform. And this is for companies or startups that aren't companies yet. Typically, one thing that we find a lot of the times when we talk to people who want to get capital is they've got an idea, they may have sat on it for 6 to 12 months, and maybe no one actually wants to put money in. And so they've wasted a lot of their time trying to get there. So we're trying to also help startups find out if there's people who want to invest in you and also people who believe in your idea. Pretty much similar to what Kickstarter does, but more from an equity perspective. And the interesting thing about our platform is once a company's fully funded, before the company's created, you can actually on-sell it. So it works a bit like eBay as well. And the key thing about that is that investors can build zero-cost portfolios. What we want to do is help investors continually invest in startups and startups to continually get investment. Next slide. So why are we doing it? Startups. One thing we get all the time is, I need money. How much do you need? I don't know. So we always ask, how much do you minimum need? How much does it cost to build a platform? How much does it cost to at least get your foot out of the door? Typically, this is between $25,000 and $100,000 US. So that's a problem for startups because there's just too many startups looking for funds and not enough money out there. But importantly for the investors, you can't actually get your money out because you want to invest in those cool ideas. A lot of us investors are just people who've saved a bit of money in the background. A lot of investors, particularly who what we're finding at Big Colours, are interested in Asian startups, and they're not from Asia, the investors. They're interested in getting into Asia. And of course, the startup trading platform does not exist. Actually, that is now untrue at this point in time, just as recently. There's a guys called the Startup Stock Exchange, and they're good friends of ours. So I guess we're all working together to help create liquidity and get startups funding. So what are we doing? We've got a product, we've got a market, we've got a lot of startups on the platform, which is great ideas, and we seek a little bit of funding as well. This is me, so I won't talk too much about the team. I'm an ex-banker, there's an ex-asset management person and an ex-business person as well. That's Ben, Jackie, and myself. And the aim of us is to actually help the startups in any form of capacity we can, particularly getting funding. So where do we fit in? Because a lot of people potentially may not understand what we're doing. We're not at the second stage. The second stage is typically where the guys from Colony 88, you may have heard of them, that you need to get to the second round. We're at the very first round, prototype stage. The company hasn't been created, and you've got a business plan. You may have a small prototype, and you want to move ahead. And we sit in the vision and mission area: growth, concepting, and then you're about to make a commitment. So just quickly a bit of the platform. I encourage everyone to go to bigcolours.com and see it. We actually have both the English and the American writing. That was one of the things we found out. We had to buy a very expensive domain name called Big Colours with a U, just so we could help the people in Australia and the UK. But we've got both of them, depending how you spell it, and feel free to check out the startup. There's a company in Hong Kong we'll be actively promoting called Redo. They're the guys from TaxiWise who've started up another platform as well to help some big people here in Hong Kong. We want to see more Hong Kong companies. We've seen a lot from everywhere else. And also from the investor side, the investor wants to see if they're making money. One thing I know, I'm an ex-banker, is a lot of bankers want to put money in startups, but they have no clue on how to. And so they would like to know how to do it and also see if they're going to make money from it. Because of course, if they make money, they keep on reinvesting. So a lot of people ask us this question: how much do we charge? 5% of the money you raise. And that's typically on 25K, about $1,250. With the trades, And we haven't seen a lot of traction in the trades at this point in time. Most people just want to get the funding first on. It's about $2.50 per trade on profit. It ends up being about $2.50. How are we doing? So we've launched in 8 weeks and we've funded 2 companies. Very, very happy to say that those 2 companies, particularly the one we get most questions on is Verxigo. It's about global co-working spaces. So most people in Hong Kong said, do you really need another co-working space? Funnily, none of those investors are from Hong Kong. And they've all got spaces that they see need in Singapore and the US and UK. So even though you think it may not work where you are, it doesn't hurt to actually see what the rest of the world thinks. And Kiss Hugs, again, a dating platform with a slight difference, and all the investors were female. There's nothing to laugh about there. It's great to get female investors. Who's talking about us? We've been very nice to get a lot of publicity. I want to thank John. He's actually helped me do this a lot. And it's been great, but I also particularly want to thank Startups HK because this is the one platform we should be publicising our successes as much as we can. This is where we work. The reason why I want to show this is actually it's a hidden joke for Deepak, who just set up Paperclip. We're the only space that's actually got a water view. I think I need to go and see Chris's space in Winlock Street. We're based in Winlock Street. And the wonderful thing about Winlock Street in Sheung-Wan, who's in Sheung-Wan at the moment? Okay, power to Sheung-Wan. Sheung-Wan is where it all happened. Actually, when I first started meeting John, was actually a coffee shop called Barista Jams. Does everyone know where that is? You should, because that's where half the startups are. And we're trying to make Winlock Street the street. And there's also great companies like Nest out there. There's Paperclip, there's HK Commons, and a lot of startups like WeLend and Now Native Union, and anyone else. I think Joy Sprouts are there as well. And come and say it to me, I'll put a big list of everyone in Sheung-Wan. Next slide. So typically for an investor, sign up, browse, invest. For a startup, put your stuff out there, put a business plan together, and a concept, and particularly a business model, and the investors may be interested in going ahead. But thank you guys, there are details. I'll pass the mic on to our next guest.
Thanks, James. That was great. Yeah, so it's really good that James brought up the subject that the startup community here in Hong Kong, which is what we are so excited about, is that we always help each other out. So when you're participating in our events, feel free to reach out to people. Like we're all trying to help each other. Yeah. So now we have another founder of a crowdfunding platform called Fund to Me, and this is Matthias.
So hi, thanks everyone for coming and of course listening to my presentation. I'm a little bit nervous because I never presented in front of 150 people. I think we have 150 today. And usually I have a partner, Simon. He's the guy responsible for marketing. I'm more the coding geek. I'm responsible for all the functions we have on the website. So, however, I think what crowdfunding is, I have to skip, so maybe you press twice. Yes, one more. Okay, just quick figure. By the end of 2013, we had more than 800 crowdfunding websites around the world. Of course, that includes donations, social lending, all of this kind, but 800 is quite impressive. And we just know a few Indiegogo, Kickstarter, or Fundable. So, next one. And we reached about $5.1 billion US raised through crowdfunding on those 800 sites. That doesn't say really much about the next one. Now you can see here by location, you see clearly that North America and Europe, of course, are the most interesting markets, or the, let's say, the major markets for crowdfunding. That's not only because of the policy, but it's also because I think of the mentality. People like crowdfunding, they're really into it. And they like the idea of not getting or buying another gadget on Amazon. They like to buy an idea, a concept. Yeah. So crowdfunding is really emotional, especially when it becomes to a reward, Kickstarter-like. Yeah. The next slide. So then we also analyzed a little bit. Okay, so this 5.1 billion US dollars, where people spend it, and here we made a small, let's say, analysis about the market share. So you can see 43%. Or spend it in reward-based campaigns, and 29% about donations, so all the platforms with a social cause. Yeah. Okay. And in equity, we have about 15%, but with a respective grow of 114. And lending, of course, is this we lend here in Hong Kong. You've also seen them before. So just to give you a little bit of picture about the different types of crowdfunding. So basically, according where you can see where we fill the gap and what James already explained really well, we are actually filling a gap in a very early stage. So when in between you need the seed funding to get a prototype done, to make your product happen, to get your concept on a certain stage. We are not replacing any institutional capital like a bank loan or let's say a huge merger or second step funding. So we are actually filling in a very early stage of a company and of a project. So the advantages, of course, we heard a lot of them this morning, so I'm going to skip that. But basically, crowdfunding is a lot of work. I mean, driving a campaign on Kickstarter or Indiegogo takes a lot of amount, and you need to prep your campaign in order to make it successful. If not, and we have about 43% of all the campaigns on Kickstarter are, that strong 43 are successful, 57 are not successful. So they are arriving through a huge quantity. Okay, next one. Next one, skip that one, we can skip. So, how we approach the market, what Fund to me made really, really different is that we are a social network of entrepreneurs with ideas, but also professionals around the world, like an engineer, designer, a coder, CEO, business strategist, registering his account and working on projects and ideas from a very early stage in order to make the quality of the ideas, or in order to make the project eligible to fund in our perspective. So because we have a lot of projects here in Hong Kong, and I would say 80% of those ideas are mostly exciting, but they are lack of something. They need advice, they need an engineer, they need a prototype, as we heard before. So there are many questions, also in the logistics. And that's what we provide before you even approach or run your public fundraiser. So we will make a little bit sure that you have all these questions done before you raise a campaign. So this is what Fund to me really does and make it different. I'm going to show you that a little bit. So basically we accelerate, guide, and fund. Yeah? So on the next one you can see acceleration is, this is just a screenshot I made yesterday. It's a really newly launched project management. So you can basically perform your own team and invite people into this team where you think you wanna have them on board because they have something you need. And as soon as you have that, you make yourself milestones online and specific tasks to these milestones, which you can then outsource to them. So they will get assigned to these tasks with a deadline, with their own communication, and you can exchange files with them while protecting the whole of the idea, because only you see the whole thing. All your members or the people benefit just see a small piece of puzzle, their tasks. So this allows you to basically put a whole idea from the scratch and making it ready and then getting a public fundraiser. So when we are ready, of course, we are combining, we do reward campaigns, but I think in Hong Kong, it's a different mentality here. Hong Kong people don't want to buy or don't see the perspective in backing a project. Yeah? They rather buy it on Taobao or in some retail store. But we do have this option, and we do equity campaigning, where you can find shareholders from around the world and getting funded. But we do more than that. So when you are ready and you get your funds, we guide you through. We do that through our investors dashboard, so we communicate, as James also explained before, you are in continuous communication with the investors through our platform. So you're going to deliver your reports automatically, and your investors can click 24/7 and can check important, let's say, figures like P&L, cash flow, asset movements, and so on our website. And of course, take countermeasures if there is anything going wrong. Yeah? But also you as a company are still using our social network in order to make it happen. So the implementation or the execution phase is also possible to manage through the social network. So what we offer, or what we think and believe what is good for investors, is that the projects we are having on the platform are not any longer just connected to one guy with an idea, but it's connected to a team of professionals which contributed and shared their vision and made this idea more valuable. I'll give you one example. I think the guy is here from EPDU. He used the network to accelerate his project from last year. We talked about 100,000 US dollars, 15%. After he runs through this project, we've got so many ideas and input. We are now talking about 1.5 million, but for an international product. So it can really help to accelerate your idea and make it bigger and better. Yeah? But the basic concept is feasibility and proof of concept, what we try to get in through the social network. Yeah, this is the investor dashboard, but I think we can skip it. So what is fundable? Pretty much everything, except of course getting rich, weapons, drugs, all of this stuff will be screened and dropped out, and you cannot imagine. We do have a lot of campaigns and fraud submissions on the side, yeah? But this is normal. But we screen everything. We are going through the checklist and coming back to you after you, I would say within 48 hours, and telling you, okay, yes, we accept the campaign, and you can start, or, well, think about it, maybe you should work a little bit more on it in terms of business plan, strategy, video, marketing, all of this stuff, yeah? So what we need, of course, people with ideas, that's always good, but we also need people who think they can contribute in anything. I don't ask people to do everything for free, but I think you could use the network in getting or establishing a relationship in a very early stage. And people are thankful, and I think if you help startups and these entrepreneurs, they will never forget, and they will become friends or partners or your future employer. You never know. Through the system or through the social network, we are providing you actually, so for every contribution you do as a professional, you will get a rating. And this rating will give you exposure to other investors or other projects or headhunters looking for new talent on this platform. So it's a win-win situation for both. We can't guarantee that you are becoming a partner. We can't guarantee that you're finding a new employer. But we can guarantee that you get an exposure through your rating. And you can basically perform or build your own CV by what you do and helping others. Okay? And of course, investors, I mean, everybody needs investors. You've got them already. We need them, of course, so please sign up. Yeah? As many as possible, especially in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is very conservative. Yeah? The Hong Kong investors, they want only companies who are already running the business for 20 years and still want a cheap buck in it. So our investor base is, to be honest with you, mostly back in the US, but also Europe, especially Switzerland and Germany. So that's it. Thank you very much, and I would say over to the panel.
Yes, that's right. Thanks, okay. So let's have the panelists on investors for banks and startups. How many of you have been crowdfunding like backers projects? Okay, great. So yeah, so we have a very interesting panel here today, and I'd like to start off with the first question to the panel that's out here. Is like, for these participants to take advantage of crowdfunding, what should they think about first? Like, we are in Asia right now, and like the investors are not really used to buying actually products online, as Matthias was saying. Like, is there something like a mentality that you should come to crowdfunding when you are an entrepreneur out here? What do you think?
Do you want me to start? I think the panel in the morning really articulated what you need to do to build a product and how to build the brand about the product. So the first and foremost thing to do is to really take the advice from the guys that were brilliant on how you market it. So in any business around the world, no matter if it's Asia or in the US, you need to have a marketing strategy. But from a local perspective, we have to remember Hong Kong particularly is a traditional country. There's a lot of family offices that don't get crowdfunding. There's a lot of lawyers, except this lovely lady over here, that don't get crowdfunding. And that potentially is an education process. So as Asia builds up its, I guess, crowdfunding expertise, it's going to be easier to raise in Asia. But the one thing I sort of pointed out in my discussion is that people overseas are very interested in what's happening in Hong Kong. So build your product at this point in time to appeal to people outside of Hong Kong.
Yeah, I agree to that. Basically, the crowdfunding community in Hong Kong is, we have a lot of software innovations. I mean, I've got a lot of projects coming in for mobile apps and all of this stuff. And I see this perspective, you know, it's really hard to get this project on a backing basis funded in Hong Kong. But I believe in the strengths, and this is what already the speakers told us before, is that we have a huge potential in hardware innovations, and as soon as we have one, we might want to get in a bigger consumer market, especially in the US, because there are the bigger consumers. But I still think there is a huge potential for Hong Kong, especially in crowdfunding. But I would say it takes some time and education to make people understand, especially the Hong Kongese people, understand what crowdfunding is and what is the advantage out of it. Nevertheless, we already have 2 websites in China, Demon Hours and Dream More. They are Chinese websites where Chinese entrepreneurs already do a Kickstarter-like project fundings. Much smaller amounts than back in the US, but you can see already there in a really traditional environment, there's always some movement. So I think this will come to Hong Kong sooner or later, for sure.
Sure. So from the legal perspective, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking to put their projects on these crowdfunding websites, but they also have the concerns that they're going to throw their idea out there to be shown to the whole world and get, you know, these copycats copying their products. Is there anything, you know, from the legal side you think that could protect, you know, these founders, or like any sort of like intellectual property law that can help?
Yeah, I would definitely, you know, before you put your product out there, consult an intellectual property lawyer, because it does depend on the kind of product as well. So if it's something that is a concept that is sort of for here and now, and you know it's going to sort of take off and it will be copied, but you want to be the first mover, obviously there's advantages to getting it out in the market. But if it's something that does have a lot of, you know, potentially patentable technology in there, you know, you need to think about protecting that before you put the idea out there, because otherwise you'll lose your advantages. So it really depends on the product. You know, and it might just be something as well that the IP is not always going to be in the patent, or something like that. It's going to be in the branding, and so you know you might want to just think about doing very basic steps of filing trademarks, protecting your brand, you know, before you put that out there, because that's going to be very important as well. If you do have a very successful campaign on Kickstarter, you know, you want to make sure that you've got your and your product's going to be a successful follow-on. You want to make sure you have all the right domain names. You want to have your trademarks registered in your key markets to protect them. So just basic IP protection. It's not all going to be about patents, which obviously take a long time, and a lot of projects, they're not going to be protected until the patent is proved, which is a very, very long time. So it's going to be a specific type of product that needs that initial patent IP protection.
Yeah, I think that raises a really good point. I think, like, you know, IP sometimes it's harder to apply for. It takes a much longer process. Get the easy stuff done first. I think the trademark, you know, how actually earlier, like Daniel was mentioning about the walls that you can build around your products. I think those walls, one of it is the branding and the fact that, you know, the consumers will be buying from you and not like your copycat. I think the trademark and also, yeah, has a lot to do with that.
And you also want to make sure that you protect it, you know, within your organisation and with your partners as well. So it's sort of part of, you know, and it's wrapped up in what Matt was talking about as well. If you're looking at partnering with people, you've got to make sure it's very clear who owns what idea. You know, if someone's working for you, there's a general presumption that you own the IP, and you know there is an employee sort of working for you and developing it for you. It never hurts to get that all squared away up front. You know, is someone a contractor or an employee, and who owns what? Yeah, it's better to be safe up front than to have, you know, you've got a good case of a very, very, very successful product, but then you've got the flip side of people arguing over whose idea was it and who owns the IP.
It's true, especially when in a lot of these hardware, like Kickstarter projects, where you actually work with an outsourcer to produce the tooling. Like, who actually owns the tools? Who actually owns, you know, the right to the design? So on the next subject, like from the investor point of view, you know, like you know, the two of your platforms actually involves crowdfunding equity. I mean, this whole morning is about rewards. It's more straightforward when you're actually investing into a product itself. But now you're actually investing into the equity of the company. So you know, the question to the panel, like, what are the complexities in that? Like, have you been facing, you know, any hurdles when you're explaining your concept and so forth?
Explaining buying into a business is very easy. Explaining equity crowdfunding does take some time. Particular, actually, not necessarily to the investor, but to the startup. There's a lot of concerns by startups, particularly as in, oh, I'm going to get 30 investors in my company, I can't pick who they are. Now, typically, I always say to a startup is that if that's the case and you don't want to do it, don't go on crowdfunding, first and foremost. Or if you're going to do crowdfunding, set your company up so that someone has to have a minimal buying into the business, i.e. 5% to 10%, so they've got some weight. Because, you know, you've heard from, at least from the panel this morning, about people asking more questions. The last thing you want is an investor, as you get started, going, you know, tell me about how far you're going, tell me about your P&L. So I think you need to decide what you want before you even decide to go on crowdfunding as a baseline. So from my experience, it's certainly the startups that need to be educated as opposed to the investors. Investors get it very quickly. Investors in Hong Kong are getting it, but what we're finding is that when we're talking to family offices, I'm going to be very politically correct, the new generation is particularly educated overseas, absolutely for it. And they're the people who you should start talking to, as opposed to the older generation that made money on property and in stocks. That may be a harder sell, but the newer generation, they're 100% for it, because they've seen Kickstarter, they've seen Indiegogo, and go on all other platforms.
Yeah, good, agree to that. But I also think, of course, you need to explain that to the startups itself, what you said, in terms of what comes in with it. Yeah? I mean, a lot of people say, okay, and then I'm going to sell 50% of the company or 20 for an amount X. But you know, I mean, an investor is always a person to deal with. It could be a burden, but it could also be a benefit in terms of, is it an active investor? Does he want to get really involved into the business? Does it bring resources with it? So there are a lot of questions you need to ask yourself before, not just if you want to go for crowdfunding, but also which type of investors you want. And this particular point, I disagree. Even in crowdfunding, you should choose which investor you let in or not, because what you don't want is a bunch of people which are driving you crazy and basically destroying your operation just by petting them all the time. Yeah? But as I said, of course, there are many questions. So especially in equity, we do consult every business we have a personal approach. So all the businesses have to come to our office. We've talked about this. We're going through the process. What comes with? Then we send you home with a huge block or huge checklist you have to think about, and then we are going further in the process.
I want to add more to that. Matt brings up a good point. One thing we do, of course, at Big Colours, for the companies that get funded, there's a couple of law firms that are of good use here. There's great law firms like Dorsey, but no offence to your costs, of course, but if you want to go cheap and you can't afford much, there's people like Dragon Law. So Daniel Walker from that company can help you with the legals. But typically what we do, and we tell every startup, is the first thing you should do once you get investors from outside is put yourself a weekly business report that you send out. So that can eliminate a lot of the stress when you've got investors that you may not may cause you problems in a crowdfunding position, that if you get them notified all the time, it works. And you probably have just seen from other companies that didn't get equity investment but got crowdfunding, it's all about updating and keeping people updated. If you keep on doing that, that's the first, that will take out 95% of the stress that you've got with whatever crowdfunding platform you use.
So for Eden, like from the investor side of, from the investor point of view, like, are you getting a lot of questions from investors on the crowdfunding platform, or like projects that are getting crowdfunded?
We're seeing generally some interest in people that want to sort of get involved in this area. You know, there's the, sort of the ex-bankers and so forth that are sort of looking at concepts in this area. You know, but it has been, you know, we've traditionally dealt a lot on the PE and VC side, and so we have sort of seen investors at that stage looking to get involved in crowdfunding enterprises. So, but yeah, it's obviously, you know, and going back to sort of one step that we haven't covered, like in Hong Kong there are obvious limits to what you can do in crowdfunding, and you've probably all sort of heard about those. When you're talking about equity investors, you know, it's never going to be the traditional, you know, when we look at the typical products, you know, reward-based crowdfunding, which have thousands and thousands of investors, there's never really going to be the ideal model for equity, because, you know, you're talking about thousands and thousands of shareholders that you need to have, you know, investor relations with, basically. But also there's going to be limitations, and especially in Hong Kong, you know, once you start offering shares to the public, you have to have a prospectus. So there are ways around that. There are sort of safe harbors in Hong Kong where you're selling to professional investors. So there's high net worth individuals or companies. There's also limits, so, and they're not going to fit within necessarily the traditional crowdfunding, but there's sort of limits to like raising not more than 5 million Hong Kong, not selling to more than 50 investors, or selling in blocks of like 500,000 Hong Kong each. They're sort of the more traditional safe harbors that we often see for private placements. That's the way people get around making an offer to the public. Otherwise, just general, you're offering shares to the public, you need a prospectus, which is a massive undertaking. That's what companies do much later stage on IPO.
So for the crowdfunding platforms, for the investor side of things, like, you know, what do you think are they looking for, you know, in terms of like project-wise? Like, I see that you're attracting more like the Western, you know, and the European investors. From like the Asian investors, like what do you actually get any like of the feedbacks or concerns that they have with, you know, your type of platforms? And like, why aren't they participating as much, do you think?
Yeah, good question, and easy answer, because we are basically, some of them, they hate us actually, because we are destroying their deals. And, you know, a classic, a typical angel investor, not as good as you are because you have a good heart, but, you know, basically I'm looking always for a very, very good deal. So what means for them? A high percentage of shares for as less as money as possible. And what we are doing is counterproductive. We are basically trying to pimp up the ideas and giving them less. So that's why they are not so, let's say, they don't like us at the moment, but I believe that will change, because that will change as we will provide them with our platforms, and I think you do the same principle, high quality ideas, so continuous ideas. And investors usually not a one-time investment. They invest all the time in different projects, and if you provide them an idea where they can find sustainable projects which have a high success rate, while making it easy to manage my investments, well, why not? Maybe then I don't have the best deal, but when it sums it up to my small deals, it makes the same thing and maybe more money.
I want to touch up on that. You made a couple of good points. One thing I'm seeing, this is, I guess globally, in the US and the UK and Australia, they've become accustomed to Kickstarter campaigns. And it's great to sort of buy a jump, but I wouldn't mind actually, and they're thinking actually, I would like to actually buy into the business as best as I can, because they're probably going to give me a jump anyway. So that is one thing that a lot of investors are now going, what an awesome product. I want to get in on this company. But by the time it's hit Kickstarter, good luck to you. You need to be a big VC. And so I wouldn't say in our instances that Asian investors are hating us. We've got two types of investors, one being the bankers, the doctors, the lawyers who fit the accredited investor bracket, who just want to get in it because they just don't think they're going to get a massive bonus, or they're sick of their job. That's sort of the way they're heading. And the other ones being the other VC/angel investors who actually will very rarely use our platform because they've probably got access to those deals anyway. And so I think there needs to be qualification. But in Asia, that's changing, particularly with the young generation moving up.
So in the audience, is there anyone actually looking to start up a business that's related to crowdfunding itself, like setting up a platform in a different vertical? Okay. So yeah, from your perspective, I think I'd like to check with the panelists, how do you actually, how do you actually come up even with your idea, or what are the challenges that you face when you actually create this crowdfunding platform?
Buying. The biggest issue with crowdfunding is that it's very well known overseas. Sort of touched on this point. Very not well known in Asia. And what I've noticed since we've been sort of expanding rapidly to other Asian countries is there are, and I'm not allowed to say the investment company, but a very prominent one told me, why you set up in Hong Kong, there's nothing successful in Hong Kong. So please, the first thing I want you guys to do is prove him wrong. And that's something very passionate to me. And so, and hopefully I'm not going to go on a tangent here, the problem with setting up a platform is that there's sometimes a lack of trust. And so what we're trying to do with our platform is actually really go as global as we can and not just be a specific Hong Kong company. We've got roots in Hong Kong, don't get me wrong, but we've also a US, a UK, a Swedish and an Australian platform as well. But get back to education, that's been probably the biggest hurdle for us.
Cool.
Question? No, I'm just going to ask a related question. I mean, what are, to your point, given that you're trying to go to other markets, what are some of the regulatory issues that you come across? Because obviously the agreements are going to be a lot complicated.
Right.
You talked about dealing with professional investors. What if you're marketing, a Swedish company or even a Chinese company to investors in Sweden, for example? So how do you come around that issue?
The one beautiful thing about the world is there's lots of rules that are very similar to what are in Hong Kong, particularly about professional investors. And one of the things that probably Eden will talk more about this, not just from a Hong Kong perspective, but globally, is that for professional investors, there's an element of risk understanding. So instead of, and I'll get to the Jobs Act in a moment, if we talk to people in Singapore, they've got similar rules in regards to professional investment. But because the crowdfunding laws outside the Sweden, US, UK, Australia are relatively loose, we're deciding not to go into those markets yet. The only reason why we're going to those markets is to look at the startups. But essentially they're buying either a Hong Kong, a Singapore, US or UK company. Over time that will change. But with the Jobs Act coming up in the next 6 months where it's potentially allowing anyone to invest, that's where it actually could even be more work for us as well, because there's a level of education and understanding. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. You have, but I mean, if that's the US, right, the Jobs Act. But what about Hong Kong? Or what about a Chinese company that wants to raise capital from US investors or just all over? Because if you're just, I'm just trying to understand how you make your business more unscalable. Because if you're only dealing with Hong Kong and companies in Hong Kong, it's a very small market, right? I mean, so how do you make your model scalable by attracting more and more companies? Presumably, you want to go to markets like China, for example. So
there's places, yeah, so there's places that we're not going to get into, particularly in a big way, and that's China at this point in time, because the rules are slightly a bit loose. But we are going to the places where there's an understanding, there's an understanding from investors, and also an ability to sort of meet regulation standpoints. And we believe currently at this point in time, for at least 2014, in the countries that we're going to, there's enough work there anyway. The positives of setting up a Hong Kong company is that of the tax rules, of course, and particular reason why we wanted to do this, and this is the personal reason, and I guess Jean, John, Casey and I have spoken about this before, is to actually get the startup successes here in Hong Kong and actually build the ecosystem here. And so even though these people are from overseas, we're helping them set themselves up in Hong Kong to make it a startup hub. And that's how passionate about this at the end. We will try our best to do that. And if they want to go to the US, they go to the US, but we'll do our darndest to keep as a success stories here in Hong Kong.
That's a great point. Like Hong Kong, like you would say, is a good place for investors to actually put their money on a crowdfunding platform. Would you say that, like, because of the tax and the freedom of business and all that? I mean, it's the #1 voted like place in the world in terms of like how easy it is to do business.
Yeah, look, I saw Simon Squibb from Nest on Bloomberg the other day, and he couldn't talk high enough, and I applaud him for it for saying that Hong Kong's the #1 place to do business. And so setting up your company here is wonderful, and you've probably heard from all the hardware manufacturers and the people building products how easy it is in the Pearl River Delta to actually build and scale up your business. And importantly, investors are comfortable with Hong Kong's legal system. And so maybe take the crowdfunding element out. People just want to invest in a Hong Kong company because there's an element of trust. Had we been in China, for instance, there may be a lack of trust there. And that's no discredit to China, it's just a perception that needs to be managed. So crowdfunding in Hong Kong, as over time, the regulatory authorities are coming through, great people like Dorsey are helping out, put these things together, and there's an understanding, it will make us a stronger place for equity crowdfunding, that's for sure.
Yeah, let me pick up on that. Of course, I see Hong Kong as basically what you said. I mean, if investors from overseas, they would never invest in China. It is, first of all the balance sheets are pimped, so you never know what the company is worth it. Plus, of course, you don't get your money out, so there are so many regulations in there. I would say Hong Kong is the perfect breeding ground for the startup community in Asia, because you have a really high innovative factor here, so there are a lot of people with really smart brain which are, let's say, sorry for the language, shitting ideas. And I would say in a long-term perspective, plus you have the Pearl River Delta manufacturing China, which you can still use in order to make hardware ideas happen. And that's what the guys in Silicon Valley, they don't have it. They have software innovation. They know how to make websites and create apps and all of this stuff, but they don't know how to manufacture it because they just simply don't have the resources for it. And that's why I think, and if that changes in Hong Kong, and we can see it already right now, that there are more hardware innovations coming, then I think we have a great potential in being not Silicon Valley too, but our own really, let's say, Asia Valley whatsoever. Yeah?
Shenzhen. Remember, it's Shenzhen.
Cyberport.
Let's not talk about Cyberport. Shenzhen.
So Eden, from the legal perspective, like what is the future looking like, for this type of funding? Like, do you see that the law is like catching up fast enough, as you mentioned before? Everything is actually a little bit slower on the legislation slide.
We don't, we see the law trying to catch up, but it is a little slower. There's no the rules I spoke about before in Hong Kong. We don't really see that changing anytime soon. I mean, it takes a lot of time generally to change laws in Hong Kong. But that is one, going back to the other perspective that we spoke about, that is actually the good thing about Hong Kong. It's a stable environment. We do have the rule of law here, and we do have a robust legal system, and there's all the other perks as we know, being a low tax jurisdiction, and it's easy to employ people and all that sort of thing. But from the pure regulatory side for investment, we don't see the SFC suddenly kind of lowering that prospectus requirement to allow people to pile into companies, and that's not the model you guys are going for anyway. And generally, if we're talking about sort of traditional crowdfunding sites as well, I mean, there's no sort of impediments in Hong Kong law to that. There's, the law is already there, and it's very friendly for that, and there's, you know, as we said, a robust legal system as well as, you know, very solid IP protection here. So, you know, it is really an ideal place to start up a lot of these businesses.
Yeah, that's great news for everyone who's looking for funding, something that is like, you know, a lot, well, people have been complaining how difficult it is to raise, so hopefully like all these crowdfunding platforms are gonna help us. So I'm gonna open it up now to the floor for questions.
This gentleman here with the white hat.
Yeah, I have a question for you. One of the first things you said during your presentation is we're trying to offer angel investors a way out.
Yes.
Because I mean, I know that I'm also trying to find angel investors, so obviously this is a big point. However, in your description of your business, I see you try to present kind of an evolution over time of what's the price, the value of your investment in the company. So my question is, how do you actually value it? Because for companies like us, startups, I mean, we don't trade on the stock market, so basically it's a subjective art sometimes to place a valuation. So my question is, how do you deal with that, and how do I tell the investors there's a way out with your system?
I would never say there's a way out. What we're finding on Blue Colors is that a lot of people don't actually want to trade. They just want to get into the company. And if their business model needs to move from just the trading and just be helping companies get funded, we're more than happy to do that. Doesn't bother us. To answer your question, which is the question I get from everyone else, I'm going to ask everyone, how much do you think you're worth? A lot. Yeah, you know, I think I'm worth $10 billion. Now, I'm sure John doesn't think that. I love John, don't worry. Every company that's on a platform is at $500,000. Why? There's no IP. There's no revenue. There's, well, not company, I'll use startup. There's nothing but a business plan, a pitch, and maybe a prototype. And so if you want to convince an investor that you're worth $10 million, you better have a cure of cancer. Because, and that will be certainly patented, I can guarantee you that. We are at that stage, so we're at the very first stage. But we're hoping that the best part about a platform like ours, and I guess fun to me, is that we set your valuation at a startup point. Because in the future, what we want for angels is to, as I said, keep on reinvesting, but at least you know your value is at $500,000. So instead of saying, my company's worth $20 million, they'll go, what was your previous investment? That's $500,000. And that's why we put everything at $500,000. In the future, will that change? Maybe, because a lot of VCs are asking us to. But we'll just see how we go. It's only been 8 weeks, but everything's at $500,000.
Greetings. First, I just want to say congratulations and thank you all for being here. My name is John Baudre. I'm from Los Angeles. I spent about 4 years in China. Originally was in private equity, but after the apocalypse, moved from New York, came to Shanghai and started a business with a Chinese partner. And originally was in sourcing, so helping U.S. companies find stuff to make. And then went into entertainment branding, so then helping them sell things in China. And now my wife and I, she's here in Hong Kong and working in finance as well. We're looking to transition our business into a lot of our friends, old banking friends or whatnot, are looking to invest. So like, hey, you've helped us make things, you'll sell things, like, what's going on there? Tell us what's going on in China. And so we're looking to transition to actually help them make those investments. Just wondering about your platform, how do you see using your platform for companies that want to be like a fund to fund, right? If you want to call it a fund to fund, right? That's like, you know, there's a lot of different things, maybe there's 4 or 5 different great products here in Hong Kong, but I'm a banker in New York, I work 100 hours, I don't have really time to fly there and look at it, but I want to put money in your hands and you know, invest in that startup and those kind of things like that. What is the, do you see that as a method, you know, to use your platform, and is that an evolution that you're actually looking to go into, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very good. Yes, that's the bigger picture actually. We want to do it, but of course it requires a certain legal setup. In instance, at least a fund size of $2 million US, plus of course all the fund managers, which cost a lot of money. So we've decided to start really small and first getting a kind of a reputation that we have successful companies, but at least in our business plan at least say so, in the next 3 years, fund to me, in my instance, we want to be a fund. where people can invest from around the world. Instead of bringing your money to the bank or putting in any other funding scheme, why not let's choose your own business you want to invest in. Yeah. So this is, but it's really, really hard. And then I would say we have a long way to go to make that happen, because it's not just enough to make a pink website like Fund2Me and say, hey, we are here and now give us your money. You know, we need a repetition. This takes time. Yeah. Plus, of course, the legal environment in Hong Kong is quite difficult because it's really traditional. They're not so open. I've talked myself with the SFC for hours and never received a really clear statement. They never said yes or no. They said maybe. Yeah? Apply, then I tell you yes or no. Yeah? So we want to grow a little bit before we step into this water. Yeah?
I'm slightly different because I've been an angel investor for a while. One thing that we're doing at Big Colours is investing in every startup. A couple of reasons. One, we're holding ourselves from the risk, and being a shareholder of the company, we can make sure that that company does its job. Because ultimately our success at Big Colours will be on how successful the startups are, not necessarily how successful Big Colours are. It's the same with Kickstarter. Their success is on the pebbles, on the 3D doodlers and everything else out there. That's our success. We plan on continuing that model. We've already started, and as an angel investor, I haven't raised any external capital. It's all been my own. But there's been a lot of people, particularly a lot of countries, that have been wanting to piggyback us. As Matt was saying, it's actually not worth the effort, because then it becomes, you've got other investors to worry about, and we can't worry about the platform. So our rule at Big Colours is to invest in every startup, at least 1%. At least 1%, so we're part of that journey with you. But who knows what will happen in the future. But the good thing about Big Colours is we want everything to be successful, so then our business value goes up as the startups go, increasing value.
Well, I mean, apart from the fact that setting up a fund is a whole nother ball game and a whole nother legal issues, and you know, it's, yeah, I don't think it's even worth going into at this stage, but you know, it's an interesting side of things, and you know, we do expect to see that, you know, more and more in the future, especially when the equity crowdfunding gets on. It's sort of a natural progression of that. People are sort of wanting to be involved in it, but don't even want to sort of go into that. Which company do we pick? So it's sort of having someone do, you know, as funds do all over the world, do the hard work for you. But sort of, you know, I guess it's sort of an earlier stage than a VC fund, you know, and it's, yeah, interesting idea.
I wonder if I can make a comment here. Sure. To maybe to try to drum up some deals for you guys. Because what sounds like what you're talking about is what we need an app.
Well, it sounds like what you're doing, it's what we see in the private equity and VC space, where we call them private sponsor private equity funds. So therefore, maybe you can interact with these guys and maybe have an opt-in or opt-out agreement and use James's platform or use Matt's platform as a deal generation platform. And whereby, just thinking loud, you can pay me later about this. I'm not saying you don't. Since James is saying we're expensive, but we're not actually. But having said that, then one of you or yourself can act as, say, the GP or the fund manager of your friends in the States and interact with you guys. And when they have some good deals, then maybe you can be the cornerstone investors to at least drive up some traction on that company or that startup that they're trying to back.
Good point. No, very good point. And by the way, if you sign up as an investor on our website, you got to predefine your profile. So you say where you want to invest, in which industries you want to invest, which amount, which also gives you a possibility of getting your monthly digest emails based on your profile or your interests, what you want to do. So that's already possible. But managing the fund for you, it's tricky.
Thanks so much. Just thinking about the oversight, I'm one of those that's actually thinking of setting up a platform as well, so I'm beta testing right now. So one of the things that we traditionally grapple with is the level of oversight. How much time and effort and resources do you devote to screening, right? Because that's pretty expensive, and as your deal sizes are not large, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but as I think through both your models, Matthias, it sounds like yours is actually more of an incubator, but you're crowdfunding the incubation side even, right? You like via social media. But I'm not sure what your business model is there just from a funding point of view. And then James, yours is it initially sounded like you're playing more on the secondary trading side, but it sounds like ultimately maybe the interest isn't really there. But when I heard about your co-investment, it does sound like you're actually more like an incubator, which actually implies that there may or may not be a conflict. On the one hand, you're showing that you believe in these companies, but on the other hand, you have vested interest in these companies being sold. So would love to hear about how you're thinking about some of these oversight issues, how hands-off, how hands-on. We heard about Kickstarter where there's a lot of people complaining about some things, and then Indigo over there. Thank you.
Well, there was a day, of course, where we were sitting down and asking ourselves how we going to make ourselves different from all the competition from this 800 websites around the world. And I tell you honestly, we started, of course, with simply saying, okay, we're going to make a website in Hong Kong. And you have so many innovative cheeks here in Hong Kong, so they were listed after you announced that you launched the website. And we realized pretty soon that that was not happening. I mean, of course, we had a lot of submissions, but most of the ideas just needed more assistance in order to get it funded, or they were just limited just to Hong Kong, which is also not good. So yes, and then we started saying, okay, we just don't have to, we screen everything ourselves. This is basically by a system. We screen, for example, for if it's against our guidelines, but we also have a form, an online check-in form, where you basically submit your data, and that basically is the first screening. So because you have to fill everything in, if not, you don't get screened or don't get approved. And second of all, of course, we have a rough look on it. All the other stuff, and yes, we are accelerating businesses, not incubating. Incubating, I would say, I would give you money. I'm not doing it. That's coming from James. But we are helping you basically to get your prep work, to make the initial stuff done. And through that, I think we've implemented a really cool resource in keeping our operation small while involving the crowd, professionals, letting them doing their part, especially because I don't know everything from every industry. I'm from the automotive industry, but I don't know anything about the aerospace or food industry. So why not let's use these resources, getting them on board, giving them something in return, and getting the concept ready. Yeah? So this is what we basically, or this is why we have the social network, just to really increase the value of the idea and making it feasible at the end of the day. But we earn everything through the funding. 5%, of course, we also charge from equity fundings, and that's our income model. Yeah, nothing else.
From the conflict of interest question, from what we do, we are not an incubator. That is one thing that if I was to invest in my money personally, then I would help incubate. And I hate this term incubator or accelerator, because I always ask the startups, what do you need? What expertise do you need? And so if someone asks me, I need you to look at a documentation, for instance, let's say shareholders agreement, I'll do that. But already as a shareholder, I've already got a vested interest because I want it to succeed. So first off, for Big Husband Invest, we always take a minimum investment. So we're certainly not taking access to management decisions, especially under 1%. I can certainly not move a company with 1%. But we are just trying, I guess, from the startup's perspective, is actually help them be successful. And it's not necessarily, as I was speaking to a couple of the audience out here, it's not necessarily on what we can do as a company. It's just more of a, hey, do you need to talk to the media? Do you need to do this? Do you need to do that? Sometimes that's enough. In Hong Kong, we're such a small community, I think we can do that. And so another platform, great, fantastic. It's better to have more so the education comes out. But we certainly don't take any sort of management position in any startups. It's just, we've got to start up to run ourselves. It's too much hard work.
We will bring the panel to an end right now. Like perhaps we can have like a final, words from each of the speaker. Like maybe just a sentence or word of advice or anything you want to speak about.
I was quoted by Iris to this saying, and Iris is from Startups HK. The one thing I will say to every startup is understand firstly who your investor is, and typically our investor is someone who's professional. So be professional, act professional, and absolutely do professional, because sometimes a very nice PowerPoint and a very nice pitch can actually get you that funding. But if you're not at that stage, refine, and then go for it.
Yes, pretty much how it sounded as well. I mean, we had a lot of great comments from the speakers this morning, and they pretty much explained that crowdfunding is basically a lot of work and not a getting rich overnight thing, yeah, where you become the next Mark Zuckerberg. When you get fundings, the real work starts, and I think my advice to you, take all this information home and do your homework. That's the most important stuff, yeah. Might take a little bit longer, or maybe 1 or 2 months longer, but you will be successful, yeah. And yeah, that's for me. Thanks again.
Get legal advice early. No, seriously, I mean, it never hurts to think about the legal issues, not even necessarily engaging lawyers, but just, you know your product, know your target, you know, and know where you want to head, and that, you know, it helps build your story, you know, and it will help you sort of engage professionals, whether they're marketing professionals, whether they're lawyers, whether they're accountants, you know, it helps to know your business.
And for me, like, actually I just watched Wolf of Wall Street last night, and yeah, what I realized is that, you know, back in the Wall Street days, you know, they were actually making a lot of phone calls, like trying to sell, you know, penny stocks to people. And we live in a very interesting time right now. I mean, if you look at how important the video piece is in crowdfunding, is that now you can make a perfect video, and it could be viewed by millions of people. You don't have to pick up the phone and like call like 1 million people. Just make a perfect video, and you can get your message out there. It's like amazing power that we have in our hands these days, and I think it's something that, you know, we need to treasure and like really use, you know, to fund like our ideas and to get our startups off the ground. So with that, like, I really like to thank the panel, and like for a great day like with all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. This is the last slide. We want to thank our sponsors again, Fringebacker, Dorsey, PwC for the great space, SoftLayer, eMarcis, and A Securities.